Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Thursday, June 25th, 2026. Holy cow, June is almost over. Anyway, today we are talking poison ivy in the garden, some specialty crops like ginger and others that can be worth it, maybe, and what level of shade cloth you need for where you are and what you're growing. So let's do it. All right, happy Thursday, everyone. I hope you all are doing well this week so far. Been a good week on the farm here for the most part. Yesterday was not my most productive day. I'll admit that. I have a whole project, or more likely a recovery project, or I think as the kids call it, a fail, that I'm working to fix, and that took up the better part of my morning. And then I had to head to Louisville to pick up a donation from the amazing folks over there at Lou City Racing Foundation for our little 3v3 tournament that we hosted this week, which was super fun. So shouts to the Lou City Racing Foundation for that. But the heat has started to pick up a bit, so I can feel the stress coming to the farm pretty soon, with near 100-degree temperatures expected. That's 37 degrees Celsius over the next week or so, but I'm definitely not complaining. I'm looking at the heat wave over there in Europe that some of you all are dealing with. We're sitting pretty good right now, so I hope our European friends are faring well through that. And while we're on the subject of sending some love out there, definitely wanted to also send some love down to our friends and friends with family in Venezuela dealing with the fallout from those two incredibly large earthquakes down there. We're thinking of you all. I cannot imagine what it would be like to go through that on a farm, what the animals would do, what it would do to the infrastructure. Nothing good, I imagine. I'd be curious to know, have any listeners or viewers ever gone through a serious earthquake on a farm like that? What was that experience like? Any unexpected effects? For good reason, because they can be catastrophically damaging to life and buildings and all the things. We mostly hear about what happens in the cities, but what happens to those areas around those cities after a major earthquake like that? To the roads, to the infrastructure, all the support of the local agriculture. So yeah, anyway, we're thinking of you all and hoping for a speedy recovery. No easy way to transition out of talking about earthquakes, but I would in general like to still know what you all are up to on your farms. What's going well, what's not going so well, let us know. Or better yet, send us a 20-second farm video clip to Dropbox or Drive and share that with farmermike@notogrowers.com. Always an absolute highlight of my week to see those. All right, so we are going to do our normal Patreon mailbag today and catch up on questions over there. As always, you are encouraged to add your 2 cents in the comment section as to how you might answer these questions, because I definitely do not have a monopoly on all the good ideas or good advice. So yeah, feel free and encouraged to chime in with your thoughts. Today's first Patreon question of the day comes to us from Thomas, who asks, quote, "How do you handle finding poison ivy sprouting in your garden, and would you consider that a season stopper for those beds? This has historically been my one exception to no herbicides, but I want to stop spraying even poison ivy," end quote. All right, so first off, poison ivy is the worst. Now, I personally will get poison ivy on my skin, but the spots are not super itchy, and I just don't get it like others in my immediate family do. They go down really hard, so although it doesn't really bother me that bad, I have to be hyper mindful of it, where it is on the farm, even just getting it on my clothes or whatever. And we do have it come up in the gardens, and sometimes in the middle of regular growing beds, though I will say it's mostly in the perennial areas rather than our annual beds, because to be honest, and maybe a little reassuring, poison ivy is generally not the most competitive weed in the world. In a forest, that's a different story, where it can grow up and over trees and develop into almost a tree itself if given enough time. And it gets its energy in the canopy from the sunshine. But the garden, when I see it sprout up, I either just hit it with a hoe, or I put on some gloves and carefully pull it out and make sure it doesn't touch, skin or clothing. I've never seen it come back after that, and would personally never take a bed out of production for it, unless for some weird reason the bed was absolutely infested with poison ivy. Then maybe I would rethink things and my approach to dealing with it. But if I just see a few sprouts, I'm not too worried about it, just because it's not super aggressive. It's not aggressive enough, at least out in the open like that in a regularly cultivated bed. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't be absolutely thorough and careful when eradicating it. You would absolutely not want to inadvertently give poison ivy in a salad mix, for instance. So I just want to be clear that you have to, take it pretty seriously if you see it. But as far as weeds go, it's pretty low maintenance in my experience. Kill it as low on the roots as you can by pulling it or cultivating it, and you should be good to go. It generally doesn't come back. Oh, and don't burn it. You don't want to, breathe the smoke. Don't run a flame weeder over it, or, put it in a burn pile. You don't really want to breathe that smoke in. It's not great. And probably don't compost it just to be safe. I mean, a hot compost will supposedly neutralize those oils, but definitely better safe than sorry. You don't want to, throw it in the compost, and then get it on your hands. You can throw it away or, just put it somewhere you are guaranteed not to touch it, like maybe the edge of the woods with all its poison ivy buddies. Anyone else have any experience with poison ivy out there? Or maybe poison oak or some other itchy, unwanted, but perhaps less common species like that growing in the garden? Let us know. I'd be curious to hear your experiences. Anyway, we're going to take our first little break, and when we come back, some off the beaten path crops that are also eaten widely across the planet. But anyway, BRB.
I'm here at Manatee Square in Bradenton, Florida, where we are growing lots of things through the summer. And right now it's almost 100 degrees, but we have these crazy python snake beans growing. And here's a tour of Manatee Square Garden.
Today's episode is brought to you by Grown By. Grow smarter with Grown By, the farmer-owned cooperative. Grown By is the platform for online sales of everything, custom and traditional CSAs, halves of beef, flower bouquets, wholesale to restaurants, and now Grown By supports in-person sales too. Their new app, Grown By Register, you can supercharge your market and farm stand, finally bringing together your online and offline sales and customer data. Grown By is proud to make local food accessible by processing SNAP benefits online and in person right within the app. Grown By helps you put your best food forward. Schedule a demo at coop.grownby.com/no-till. That's coop.grownby.com/no-till. All right, back to the show.
A quick and loving reminder that if you, the listener or viewer, are enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. Does this show bring you $2 worth of value per month? $5? Well, you can support it. And as a bonus, I do try to get to questions from everywhere the questions come in, but I'll always get to your Patreon questions because there are usually a lot of them. Now, today's second Patreon question comes to us from Patreon member Ian at Grindstone Farms, who writes, quote, ginger, turmeric, jicama, horseradish, where do these sorts of root crops fit into a market garden setting in your eyes? Or don't they? I'm in zone 5B and almost no one in northern Michigan grows ginger, but a chef I've worked with would buy weekly if I can figure it out. Just wondering where these sorts of crops fit in, as I rarely see content on them, even from market garden content creators in warmer climates. Is it a profitability issue? Thanks as always, you rock, end quote. All right, thank you. And no, to clarify, you all rock, but great question here. So this is an interesting list: ginger, turmeric, jicama, horseradish, but it's a good one. And the reasons that you don't often or always see more growers talking about them is probably more or less the same for each crop. Ginger is the one that you will see the most in the United States and even all the way up into Canada. Between it and turmeric, they are relatively easy to grow and relatively easy to sell. The word relatively is doing quite a bit of work there in that sentence, but they are not super complicated, just slow. So what you will often see with those two crops in particular is people either growing a ton of it or almost none of it at all. The obvious first reason you don't see these crops very often among market growers is just what I alluded to there, that they are all season long crops. They take roughly like 5 months or so to grow to produce a decent crop. And in fact, to get a cured version of ginger or turmeric, which is not super common, you're looking at 9 months or more of growing space, and you even need some of that to be heated. So all summer and then well into the winter, plus relatively expensive seed is what you have to grow it from. Though I've grown ginger for years, just buying the organic stuff at the supermarket to save money on the seed cost to reasonably good effect. Beyond perennial crops, the closest thing we grow to that timeline and seed expense is probably garlic at about 6 months. But most of these months that garlic is growing are different than ginger because it can grow all winter. So it's really just like a 4 production month crop, garlic is. It's in the way, so to speak, from like March to June. Whereas those other crops are in a bed all summer when you could be growing other things. So now on jicama and horseradish, they will take about 1 full growing season to get a crop. A full growing season is a long time to keep garden space free of weeds, though, like I said, and it's a long time for just one crop. Therefore, the price has to reflect that. Again, if I can grow 3 crops that are all worth $1,000 in that amount of time, whatever I harvest from that ginger or jicama or whatever has to make me somewhere near that amount of money. So the space and time, that's part one. Part two is the issue of markets. You not only have to have a market that will buy these crops, but a market where people see the value in paying more than they are used to paying for that at the local supermarket because you will not be able to compete on price with ginger grown in bulk in other countries, for instance. You just won't. And moreover, people have grown accustomed to paying low prices for those crops in those countries and at those local markets. So although they may be excited to see, for instance, jicama at the local market, they are likely to balk at the price you have to charge in my experience. Now, people who do grow these crops grow them because they have the markets for them and can sell them in bulk at a good price. We've done well at the farmer's market with baby ginger in the past, for instance. Baby ginger just being non-cured ginger when it's nice and pink like that. We have done well giving turmeric and ginger to our CSA members, and I'm sure they would have enjoyed getting jicama or horseradish in the fall as well, or over the winter, two crops I have not notably grown. There is definitely value there. Chefs can be a great option as well, depending on, how much they can buy. So that may be a good starting point for you, just kind of getting an idea of how much they would actually take per week. And so if you're getting some interest, I think it's worth trying to grow a little bit, seeing how the market responds to the prices and going from there. And by that, I mean either going up or down in production. Oh, and the last thing I'll say is that these crops like ginger and turmeric are not only very long season crops, but tropical crops to boot. So the other factor is that they are going to do best in your climate, in particular in a tunnel, which is space that is even more valuable than field space. So that has to be factored in as well. What would you have to charge to take a bed out of production in a tunnel for 4 to 5 growing months at least for baby ginger? It can be quite high. So we can grow them okay in the fields here, but in shorter season areas, tunnels are going to be key there. Anyway, I hope that's helpful. Listeners and viewers can feel free to add their thoughts. Otherwise, I think we will take one last quick break, and when we return, how much shade to actually throw. Be right back. All right, some quick random things from the garden. One, teff and tomatoes growing nicely together there. Teff in the pathways and on the sides, tomatoes in the middle. The beans here are done, but I don't know, I may just let them go all the way and get dry. They're the Roma beans. They're not totally done, but these are getting kind of hard. So I may let these just get all the way mature. So I have some Roma bean seed for next year. Rice. Got a little bit of flowering. This stuff is slower than molasses, but it's a thing. It's growing. 3 different varieties there. Squash and zucchinis, and then the latter half of that bed is corn. And if you're like, why would you plant half a bed of each and half a bed of each of sweet corn? The answer is kind of weird. Basically, the way the sunlight works, if I'd planted either of these beds with corn, it would have shaded the other bed too much. So I kind of just planted the latter half with corn and the first half with squash. I don't know how I feel about that. We'll see how that works. Lettuce, those are pretty much done. Harvested most of that. There's still like a quarter of that bed that has to go. Tomatoes and lettuce here growing fine. Peppers growing, looking happy, healthy. Lettuce in between them. Probably gonna have to harvest that early next week because it's gonna be 100 degrees. And the milpa patch is doing pretty well. We'll see how the yields are. I'll have to update you on this, as that goes. But otherwise, yeah, more garden updates soon. That was fun. All right, so our third and final Patreon question of the day comes to us from Nathan Meadows, who writes, quote, "Hey Jesse, we're in our 5th year of commercial growing. We have 2 cat tunnels that are both 50 foot long. We have one filled with tomatoes and had plans to fill the other, but didn't get to it. I don't want the labor of 2 tomato tunnels. I was thinking of throwing some shade cloth over the currently empty tunnel for summer and growing some faster crops. What percentage of shade cloth do you recommend, and what crops would be successful in this tunnel? We are in Mercer County, Kentucky, zone 6B for context," end quote. All right, shouts to Mercer County. So good question here. There is not a perfect answer if you're going to grow a variety of things. And honestly, if you have decent ventilation, you may not need shade at all, as the plastic will diffuse the light pretty well and give you a bonus 5 or 10% shade depending on its thickness. With that in mind, you would probably not want to go much above 30% for shade over top of the tunnel, in my opinion. In our climate, and I say our climate because we share the same climate, that Mercer County is like 20 minutes south of here, because you have that shade from the plastic. If you were in a higher altitude where the sun is that much more intense than it is here for us in Kentucky, you might want to go with a higher percentage shade. But here and in most areas, 30% over a tunnel should be plenty. That said, most people recommend between 30 and 50 for most vegetables grown across the board. And I think that's fine in most areas. To me, 30 is nice because it's a good all-around shade for most crops we grow. If you are growing, certain ornamentals or things like ginseng that need really specific light treatments, then you would have to dial it in a little bit more and get the appropriate shade cloth for that. Basically, if it naturally grows in like a forest, you're going to have to shade it like it's growing in a forest. Many of the crops we grow in gardens are either recovery species, so they conveniently grow well after a disturbance, or naturally grow on the edges of forests. So that 30 to 50% range is more their speed. Moreover, that range can work for both sensitive stuff like lettuces and beets, but also tomatoes and cucumbers in the dead of summer like themselves a little shade as well. To me though, ventilation is going to get you really far in high tunnels. We don't shade our tunnel. We have a ridge vent, so that makes a huge difference, but we didn't shade on our last farm either, and we also didn't have a ridge vent. We did have really high hip boards though, which made air movement a lot better. So yeah, you may find you don't need the shade at all. Anyway, what has worked for you all or on the shade front, let us know. Otherwise, I think we can call it a Thursday. Don't forget, No Till Growers is a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. Please make sure to like and or subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That is an easy way to help us out as well. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at notillgrowers.com. Just say, hi, Michelle, I'd like to be a sponsor. Big thank you to Michelle. Big thank you to the No Till Growers Board of Directors. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and my wife Hannah for absolutely everything in the world. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a hat or a copy of my book, The Living Soul Handbook, at notillgrowers.com to support this work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/notillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of June, you get a shout out on the show. So unfortunately, no new signups today. That's all good, but that means we will get back to Grace as soon as we can, which will be tomorrow for Feedback Friday, where you all give me your feedback and then I feed back onto. I don't know how that works. Anyway, it's going to be fun. I'm going to have to stuff a lot of stuff in the ending of Grace's story. But anyway, should be a good time. We'll see you then. Thanks for watching and or listening. Bye.